Joining us now for World Brief and a review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Ruben. Gosh, I feel so powerful when you say my name. Also, when Ayo says it right before the break, it just speaks so much power to me. I feel wonderful. So thank you very much for that introduction. Thanks, guys. Good morning.
Good morning, Adefemi.
Morning.
All righty, well, let's start our world brief in the United States, of course. Of course. So we'll start in the United States, where the presumed Democratic presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, has held her first rally in Atlanta in the swing state of Georgia. If we take a look at that performance, we'll know that Grammy award-winning rapper Megan Thee Stallion opened the show with a high-energy performance of her hit songs, Mamushi and Body. And speaking of women's bodies, Meg told the crowd that if you want to keep on loving your bodies, you know who to vote for. And it's the latest boost in a surge of celebrity support for Kamala Harris, including Cardi B, Lizzo, Lil Nas X, and then also Quavo. Quavo took to the stage. He's a member of the rap group Migos, and he took to the stage to talk about gun violence. One of the members of Migos did, of course, lose his life a few years ago to gun violence. And then, of course, there's the support from Beyonce, who cleared her song Freedom to be used in a Kamala Harris campaign video. So there's a lot of support there. And looking at the rally itself, it did give Harris the opportunity to talk more about policy, especially immigration. Harris said that she would resurrect the border security bill that Trump helped to kill and sign it into law. The vice president also challenged Trump over his seeming reluctance or refusal to debate her. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
Donald, I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. Because as the saying goes, if you've got something to say,
well, there she goes. She said, if you've got something to say it to her face. Well, speaking of the Republican presidential nominee, not only will he be speaking in Atlanta this weekend, Donald Trump, that is, he'll also be meeting in Chicago today at the National Association of Black Journalists. He'll be meeting today in Chicago with the National Association of Black Journalists, and it's come with a lot of controversy because there are people who do not want, or perhaps weren't comfortable with him participating in this discussion. I hope you can still hear me in the studio.
Yes, we can.
I can't
we can, yes.
hear anything. We
can hear you.
Okay, all righty. So not only, as I said, will the Republican nominee Donald Trump be speaking in Atlanta this weekend, he'll also be participating in a conversation with journalists at the National Association of Black Journalists, their annual convention, which is taking place today in Chicago. Today is the first day. You'll also know Dr. Ruben does a great job of shouting out the fact that I'm a Neiman Fellow. And two of my closest friends from my own cohort, they are also members of the National Association of Black Journalists, and they will be attending the conversation with Donald Trump. It's also worth noting, though, that the NABJ always invites candidates. There's nothing really special about this time. They always invite candidates to their conventions, and Trump will participate in a conversation moderated by 3 journalists. But this conversation will not be open to the public or even to convention goers, though it will be streamed live online. Talking about Kamala Harris now, she was invited, but she will not be there. She cited a scheduling conflict. But her not being present has sparked a lot of controversy as Karen Attia, who is the co-chair of the NABJ's organizing committee, she actually stood down very recently, just overnight, over this decision to invite former President Donald Trump to the convention, amongst other issues. So there are lots of back and forth going on there. If we take a move away from the United States and look at the Middle East now, Hamas says its political chief Ismail Haniyeh, has been killed in Tehran. Hamas believe Israel is behind the killing, claiming that Haniyeh was killed in an Israeli raid on his residence in the Iranian capital. Now, Haniyeh was there in Iran to attend the inauguration of the new Iranian president, which took place on Tuesday. Now, in response to that, the Israeli Defense Force, the IDF, have said that they do not claim responsibility for the attack, and Israel itself says that it will not respond to foreign news allegations. Let's move on to South America now. And Venezuela has entered its third day of anti-government protests, where several people have been killed, dozens injured, and at least 750 people arrested. Now, thousands of people are demonstrating in the capital, Caracas, over the results of this presidential election, which has returned incumbent Nicolas Maduro back into office for a third consecutive 6-year term. What are your thoughts?
I mean, real quickly, Donald Trump keeps running away from this debate. I think he's scared about facing her. And based on what J.D. Vance did say, that has been a big problem for them. They don't know how to crack Kamala. And I'm also excited. Now you now see what a campaign rally is all about. People talk policies. You listen to a Trump campaign rally, you don't even know what he's talking about in the first place. He's incoherent. He doesn't talk about policies, keep jumping the point from one point to another. He just misses everything he says. You know, it's just shambolic. For the fact that someone like Trump is even running for president in America is an indictment on America itself. So let's clear that out of the way. You know, a convicted felon and all of that. Secondly, I'd also like to look at a couple of things happening on, the local scene and the local stretch. It's about the conversation as regards to protests. In a meeting yesterday with the IGP, the IGP's attention was brought to two videos circulating by NABJ Effiong, showing that some people went to a market to go ahead and threaten people that if they come out to protest, that it will have very bad effect on them. And also, all that threats here and there. But the IGP looked away from it. So let it be on record that the police authorities are looking away from people threatening others from protesting. When we want to come to equity, let's go with clean hands.
All right, let me just comment on Trump being invited to the NABJ, National Association of Black Journalists in America, to speak, and how this has caused controversy, including, like you've mentioned, the stepping down of the co-chair. They've opined that why would you platform a man like Trump who has incited, what they said to be white supremacists, racist comments against black people, that it's not just a disservice to black journalists, but it's a disservice to the communities that they serve. On the other side, there's always that big debate at Adefemi as to should you give a platform to people like this, who are far rightist or who speak against a particular group of people, or actually give them an opportunity to express themselves and really either one show who, what they stand for, who they are, and whether it would indeed sway black voters, as his camp has said to want to, or chase them away. There's always that big debate around should they be given a platform, should they not be given a platform. But historically, the NABJ have often invited the two top contenders, so it is only fair that they do the same thing. They invited Joe Biden virtually and Trump in the past, so it's not the first time, and it is in line with their tradition. But there is a big ruckus around that as to whether or not it's going to happen. And very quickly to touch on what's happened in Tehran, aside from the fact that, Israel hasn't owned up to it, it's also questioning the integrity of the security of Tehran and also encroaching on another country's territory. So there are big questions around that, and seeing if this would escalate tensions even further.
Well, to start with Kamala Harris, speaking in Atlanta, you'll recall that when President Trump came out, his first rally in North Carolina, after Kamala Harris was announced as the preferred successor by President Biden. Now, President Trump made 10 claims, false claims against Kamala Harris, one of which was about her position with regard to migration, immigration, abortion, red meat, whether or not she passed a bar exam. She failed at the first attempt, later passed, but they made it look like, oh, this is a woman who failed the exam. About 10 basic issues. So what Kamala Harris is doing now is she's beginning to respond. There were also ads, video ads against Kamala Harris where she was described as weak, dangerously liberal. Now what she's done in Atlanta is to respond to Trump, to say, look, she is an attorney. And as an attorney, and as a prosecutor, she's never supported drug trafficking. Because one of the points Trump made was about fentanyl drugs. So it's a choice between, a prosecutor and a convicted felon. And she made a point that when there was a bill before Congress to increase the number of Border Patrol agents, it was Trump himself who opposed it. So who is the person who is more committed to the security of America? But in any case, U.S.-Mexico border issues remain one of the major issues in this election. But it was good that Kamala Harris is now taking the fight to him. As for Aniye, who was killed, well, the fear is about an all-out war. Israel claimed responsibility for the killing of a Hezbollah commander in Lebanon, but he didn't claim responsibility for the killing of Aniye and his bodyguard in Iran. But the fear is that this could be an escalation because Hamas has spoken up that their political chief is not somebody you kill. Iran has condemned it. Turkey has condemned it. So the Middle East is likely to be in turmoil because we do not know what the response from Iran will be. Because Iran too can claim that it has a responsibility to defend itself and defend the integrity of its territory. So that's a big fear, but the Western leaders are calling for calm. Well, would that happen? Would others listen to the voices of reason, as they have not up to now?
Absolutely, they have not up to now. Thank you, Dr. Rubin. Well, let's take a look at some newspaper headlines from across the world. We'll start in Nigeria with the front cover of This Day. And This Day looks at the Senate saying that Tinubu's lifeline to the Dangote refinery, if you can even call it that, in terms of crude supply by the NNPC will strengthen the Naira. The Federal Executive Council, they've said that the approval of this new deal shows that Tinubu is a listening president. And then also, as you've already mentioned, our chairman of This Day and the Arise Media Group, Prince Nduka Obagbena, did advocate for journalists and for laws to protect intellectual property in the Nigerian media and creative services, specifically calling out search engine Google and of course social media platforms, Facebook and the likes of Instagram. And he made those comments while delivering the keynote address at the Lateef Jakonde Memorial Lecture. If we move on now to the front page of the New Telegraph, and organizers of these protests, they've rejected the Inspector General of Police's proposal for confined protest in confined spaces and insist of going out onto the streets for processions. That's in Lagos State, for one. Now, protests have been restricted across Nigeria to enclosed parks, as you mentioned, Freedom Park, Peace Park. And it's worth noting that Kayode Egbetogun, of course, the IGP, met with paramilitary forces too and insists that there will not be a repeat of the NSAS protests. And it is, of course, always worth reminding everyone that the NSAS protests were peaceful until they were infiltrated. So let's move on now to the Daily Trust. And Daily Trust is also looking at these protests, as are many newspapers across Nigeria, that will begin on Thursday. But another story that I'd like to talk about on the front cover of the Daily Trust looks at Kano State. Its governor, Abba Kabir Yusuf, has inaugurated a state advisory committee on the new national minimum wage. And it's the first state to do so after this minimum wage was signed into law by President Tinubu, that of course being that 70,000 Naira amount. And then if we look at the Punch is looking at a different type of story. Yoruba Nation agitator Sunday Igboho says that his group will write another letter to President Tinubu demanding a referendum on whether or not the Yoruba people who want it will be allowed to break away from Nigeria and create their own state, their own country. An earlier letter he had sent to the president demanding a vote at the end of June did not return the result that he wanted. And then if we move on to the Vanguard is reporting that the federal government has handed over 400 compressed natural gas kits to transporters in Nasarawa, Kogi, Niger and the FCT, and this is all in a bid to reduce fuel costs for vehicles used in public transport. And lastly, in terms of our Nigerian papers, if we take a look at the Leadership newspaper, they say that one day to the planned hunger protests in Nigeria, and regional leaders from the north and south have joined others in backing out of the proposed demonstrations, and they are citing fears and their non-participation on the possibility of the protests turning violent. Let's take a look at our African papers, and the Daily Graphic of Ghana looks at Ato Forson. Cassiel Ato Forson he has just won a very major courtroom victory on Tuesday. He was acquitted and discharged by the Court of Appeal on charges of causing financial losses to Ghana of 2.37 million euros to the state, and also set free from the court by that ruling was Richard Jakpa, and he's a businessman in Ghana who was standing trial with Dr. Forson on account of abetting the willful cause of financial loss to the state. Dr. Forson had been on trial for the past 2 years on various counts of causing financial loss to Ghana and misapplying public property in a deal to purchase 200 ambulances for the state from 2014 to 2016 during his tenure as Deputy Minister of Finance. And then if we move on to the Daily Nation of Kenya, 3 close aides of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua have been questioned by police over alleged links to the youth-led protest amid talks of an impeachment plot. If we move on to our international papers, yesterday we were talking about the very awful story of children who had been killed in a stabbing attack, and now we know that death toll has risen by 1. Now 3 children, 3 young girls aged 6, 7 and 9 have been killed. Their faces are on all of the newspapers in the United Kingdom. They were killed in Stockport in a stabbing attack, and the person arrested in connection with this attack is a 17-year-old teenager who has been described by the local community as a quiet boy. Those are the newspaper headlines from around the world for your discussion.
Thank you so much for bringing us updates. Really, really sad update there from Stockport. And I just really hoping that, this 17-year-old boy will be investigated and just highlights knife crimes in the United Kingdom. We have to go now, but see you again tomorrow for more updates around the world.